Well, it's been a pretty busy day so far, and I haven't gotten any time to really shoot videos. There's certainly not anything that is worth showing. So um, I've got a project that I've been working on for the last few days that I need to finish up. So I figured I would show you a little bit about wet layups and carbon fiber work. This is a flat mold here that I've been working with. And I got 6 parts down here. The first layers are already done, and need to add the core material to add some strength to them, and then the last layer is of carbon, and figured I'd just walk you through that process and show that to you this afternoon. This is the part where we just pull the vacuum bagging off from the last layup. Okay, now that that's all off, we can start putting the bagging material around. This is just the tape that holds down the vacuum bag and helps create all the pressure on the parts. So I started this layup a week ago, and so some of the parts and steps you're seeing I've kind of already gone through, but those are the raw pieces now, and they're ready to get the next layers done. I've already pre-cut all my core material, and I have my breather sheet already done and my breather material. This is actually called a Perf Sheet, and what it does is regulates letting the air out of the part and controlling the amount of resin that you leave behind. This is what keeps the bag from actually sealing itself right to the part, and allows the air to be pulled out while compressing all the fabrics. So this is just a strengthener that we're adding, and I'll show you that when it's all done. So what I didn't show you in the video just a second ago is I've already pre-cut all my carbon fiber fabric, and I'm using 2 different types of fabrics on this layup. One is a cosmetic layup fabric, just to make the part look good, and the other is more filler to build space and thickness up on the carbon. But these are non-structural parts, so we're not really concerned about the weave as much as we are just building a simple piece. So now I'm just going to put all my core materials down. Get them centered up. The principle behind the core material is to create basically an I-beam. It separates the first set of layers of fabric away from the last layers, and essentially is creating an I-beam between the 2 parts. And so without adding much weight, we're adding a lot of strength to the part. So over here is my already pre-cut fabric, and we'll lay the dry pieces on top here. And then we'll wet those out in just a second. So the reason we call this a wet layup is that the fabric is going on dry and I'm adding the resin to it. So I've mixed the hardener and the resin together, and now I'm going to stipple them in with this brush. Now the difference in this, the other option, is what's called Prepreg. And Prepreg is fabric that already has the resin and hardener mixed together. Now the trick to that is you have to have very cold storage temperatures to keep all your materials from cooking off, and they also have a very high temperature rate. This resin that I'm using here will cure at room temperature here, whereas the Prepreg resins need to be put into an oven or an autoclave depending on the type of method you're using for bagging them. I'm just going to continue to work this resin into these layers to get as much of the air out as I can. It also helps saturate the fabric, because you see it doesn't want to just lay right down. You kind of have to get it wet and let it soak it in, and then it'll start becoming more malleable. Okay, so all the resin's in, and now it's time to put down the perf sheet. And again, the Perf Sheet is just a regulator. It's full of tiny little holes that will allow the material to pull the resin out and pull the excess resin, that is, and it'll help pull the, let the air pass through the little holes though. Now the reason I use all these individual pieces of Perf Sheet and the individual pieces of carbon is, yes, I'm making individual parts, but I could have gone and made one big layup. But the problem you get is these parts aren't completely flat. As I put this filler material in behind them, what they'll do, what you'll tend to get, is called bridging. And the material won't want to sit down between the parts, and you'll get gaps and fabric won't go in there, and you'll get air and all sorts of little nuances of trouble that drive you crazy. So when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you don't have any bridging. Now the vacuum bag is going to pull all this down real tight and nice. What I'm just trying to do is alleviate any kind of mess ups, because you can get yourself into a corner without the bag being able to help you then, by having gaps and trapped sections of the fabric and other materials. This here is called the breather material, and this basically keeps a space between the bag and the part so that air will move through this, come out of the part and through the material and then into the vacuum pump, and that will allow you to have a real nice tight piece. Now you also have to connect all these to each other, and so I use these scraps here to connect all these parts together. Now all the breather's down, and the breather helps you get air out of the part and not let the bag seal to it. And then all I've done is put down a bunch of little pieces to connect it so that all the air can move across it and not get trapped by the bag. Now I'll pull off my protective backing off of the bagging tape that I put down earlier. Set that aside, and I put my vacuum bag on top. Okay, so now you see I'm just working the vacuum bag to make sure it's got as few gaps in it as possible, because once I put vacuum to it, it'll tighten up, and then I'll be looking for any other possible leaks that are in here, because you want to get really good vacuum on here. Today's barometric pressure is down a little bit, but I'm going to be hoping to pull about 27 inches on this part. And now we apply vacuum pressure. Now you can see the resin is actually coming up through the little tiny holes, and you can see I'm a little resin rich. It's pulling up a lot right now, but also the air is also getting pulled out through this vacuum hose at the end of the mold. And what that does is it compresses these parts really very tightly and makes for a very strong part. And we're going to get some of that excess resin out, which is going to be good and make these parts real nice and light and strong. So the vacuum pressure is all off, and it's time to peel this open and see what we got. Okay, so what looks like a mess is actually a good thing right now. So just grab these corners here, start peeling off. Alright, so now I just have this perf sheet down here. Alright, there it is with all the perf sheet off. Now, let's peel one of these up and take a look at what it looks like. Now I just got to use a little knife to get underneath the edge of it. And ta-da! So there's the part that I just pulled up. And it's still got the release agent on it. So the this plasticky kind of film here, that's still a boundary layer down. You can see me peeling it up here. And that's what keeps your part from actually sticking to your mold. Because when I put this down on the mold, I'm essentially just epoxying it. Alright, let's see if we can get this sucker to focus here and show you how cool that looks. So they're ugly and rough right now, but when we get all done, all that edging or flashing I call it will get trimmed off. We'll end up with a piece like this. And that's the back side that you saw us putting the foam core in. And that's it. That will be the finished product.